Welcome to Cheques and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And this week we have an extra special guest, Ilse Wolfe, Director of OPS Accelerate, here to tell us about Cashflow Hacking 101.
Cashflow Hacking 101, otherwise known as Brr. It's cold in here. There must be something in the atmosphere.
There's nothing in the atmosphere.
Owie. Nice. Here we go. Ilse, Cashflow Hacking or the Brr strategy. Do you want to do we could do a duet type thing here, or
not duet.
Nope. Hey, the views are the views, Mike. People like me singing, right?
You like you singing. No one likes you singing. You like you singing.
This is a platform.
This is not a musical. This is not The Lion King.
I love a musical. So, Ilse, probably the best starting point is, so last episode you talked about your journey. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to talk about kind of what you do day in, day out. So maybe a great starting point. Tell us a little bit about OPS Accelerate, and then maybe afterwards, I guess what the Brr strategy is all about.
Cool. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the director of OPS Accelerate. So I'm one of a couple of people in the wider OPS group, and who focus on existing builds. So existing build, I guess according to the IRD's eyes, is
which is important.
Is basically an opportunity to buy properties that were predominantly built from the 1950s up until the 70s. Really, sort of that perfect window of time when older houses were built on big old sections, like the good old suburban sections, whether it's in Auckland or right down to Invercargill. There's a ton of opportunity, and having had years in renovations focused or experimenting with different value add strategies, I've developed the system called Cashflow Hacking, which is 6 key principles that I can talk you through, all geared towards a fast and cost effective renovation. Ideally, not needing to have things like consents, just so that obviously, if there is a consent required, we go about that. Yeah. But really focusing on how to up-spec a property, increase the number of bedrooms, toilets or bathrooms, add sleep outs, in ways to distort positively the rent for that property. And the Cashflow Hacking principles are really a spin on the Brr strategy. Yeah. So the Brr strategy, which is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat, is a really well-known strategy where some of the principles are similar, but the Brr is focused towards raising that deposit or raising the value of the property. I help investors really focus on driving through the cash flow, and then the equity will come with it.
Yeah, and it is in the market at the moment, the cash flow piece is often slept on. People really focus on the equity and, my property values come back, and if I do this, I can raise the value by this. But actually, a lot of people are getting caught out with not having the cash flow to keep repeting their investment strategy.
Funnily enough, recently they've remembered with 7% interest rates that cash flow is important.
Yeah.
Nobody was that stressed at 2%.
No. And that's the thing, is that with the strategy, it suits every stage of the property cycle. I really genuinely love it for that reason. So if the market's in growth, awesome. You can renovate, spend $1, probably get 3 or 4 or 5 back. But more importantly, in a decline or a soft or flat market like we are now, it creates additional equity in the property that buffers risk. So if you buy a property and you're worried about losing your initial capital that you've grinded years to build up, you can add value through that renovation. And if you lose a bit of value, if it comes back 2 or 3, 4%, it's the gain that you've lost, not your capital, not your effort. So it really does suit all stages.
And also, you don't actually have to go out and buy a new property to do this. If you have a property portfolio, you can review suitable properties in your portfolio and add value that way. So you may be tapped out. I don't have the ability to go get another house at the moment. Let's review the portfolio. Can we do a bit here, like you said, increase those rents, build a bit of equity, get them revalued. And that may get you into the position where actually, 1, you're making more out of your portfolio, better ROI, or 2, we can go again.
The great thing about existing properties is, I believe, that the two two key benefits. One is that you have a dated property. So either it's been neglected or it's just dated. It doesn't have to be like the most rundown, neglected property ever.
Doesn't have to be the block.
Yeah. So it's sort of, modernize the floor layout, because older floor plans do not necessarily work for modern day lifestyles. And also if you look at new builds, open plan living is far more on trend, or the way that we want to socialize in the house, rather than have these 4 more separate rooms. So you can optimize the layout of the house and to make it feel like a new build by cosmetically completely upgrading it, LED downlights, making it look great.
Yeah.
But also the second benefit that I think often gets overlooked if we're purely thinking about rental properties is the land. So if you're buying this house on a 700, 800, 900 square meter property, the second option or benefit I believe you get is different options for exit strategy.
Yeah.
So, if for some reason I do find it hard to hold this rental in future, for whatever reason, I can subdivide that land, I can sell that land and pay down, basically have 2 different assets or different levers to help as exit strategies. Whereas with the new build strategy, it's great if you want to be completely hands off, definitely benefits to it. But if you need to sell the property, you automatically sell the rental. That income's forever gone.
Yeah. And it's funny, I'm not great at imagining, like I walk into a house and I go, oh yeah, this is the house. There's nothing I can do here. Like I don't have that sort of imagination, but like some of the designs I've seen you guys do when you said like, oh, what do you think we did with it? I'm like, oh, the obvious thing is to add a wall here. And you go, no, Michael, you're an idiot. You add 2 walls here and you get all of this. I'm like, oh my God, like look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. My spatial awareness is just horrendous.
Also, your social awareness, God.
I am who I am. But my spatial awareness when I bought my first place, Han's like, that's way too much couch for the living room. And I'm like, you don't know what too much couch is. And I just bought this like 7-seater for like a 2-bedroom townhouse. And literally the living room was just couch.
Yeah. Just going to come in the door.
Yeah, it was pretty much that setup.
Yeah.
It was comfortable though. So we've spoken about the birth strategy and some ways to add some value, and we'll go into that a little bit more in a second. What are some of the most common mistakes that property investors are making at the moment?
Well, given the tax environment with the removal of interest deductibility from existing builds, I would say the biggest mistake, or what is not really feasible if you were trying to build a portfolio of properties, is to buy an existing build and then take it as it is. So, buy it as you see it on Trade Me or wherever, rent it out. It will be substandard at best. It's so disadvantageous to take an asset or a building that has so much opportunity and to just leave all of that cash flow on the table, mostly for the reason that it will be your own handbrake. If you want to do yourself the right thing to help yourself along, it would be to just look at the property, see what the opportunities are, because if you can sort of see that you've added as much value and potential to it as possible, that it's going to basically work alongside you to get you towards the next one.
Yeah.
It's pretty much BRRRR or new build, right?
Yeah.
They're the 2 options.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So the mistake is just buying. It just doesn't make sense to buy something and just do nothing to it. Really,
that's right. Yeah, just to do that. And I think, someone who's astute and runs the numbers at the beginning and can see that there's, a big tax bill if it's going to be, have a decent size loan against it, which is most buyers I see, then there's going to be a real shock come end of year accounts, come see momentum accounting and the fright of your life. So, and the other thing that doesn't really work either is a fresh lick of paint anymore.
Yeah.
You might get $10 extra or $20 extra a week. That will not move the needle when it comes to tax payment day. Yeah.
Some friends of mine are moving from Canada to New Zealand at the moment. They were in New Zealand recently, and they're going around looking at some of these houses, and they were like, honestly, they're like, you can't just paint the house and think you can charge me 50 grand more for it. they're like, it's still a terrible house. So that's some of the common mistakes people made. How do you guys and how do you specifically help people work through these and try to avoid them?
So I think probably following on from that, the other mistake would be buying a property, going to renovate, but also not knowing what the outcome is. Either how much does that renovation cost, and also what will the rent increase or change to be afterwards. Because, if you're just guessing and thinking, hey, if I renovate, it'll add value, it'll add to the rent, you need to know where that lands, because there's no point in renovating unless the return or the increase in that rent is going to make the overall property debt perform more efficiently.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's sort of a 5% yield and then you renovate and you end up a bit higher, but you've got more debt, you're literally no further ahead.
Zero-sum game,
Zero-sum game, exactly. So kind of learning how to do the numbers and run the deals, that's where most of my investors come to me to help them hone that deal. So how much should I buy? What's the type of property I can really well cash flow hack? Which locations with the best economy and strength of growth can I afford? And so therefore, how much should I spend on the purchase? How much should I spend on the renovation? And how they can go about due diligence in a way to know what the value will be at the end, and with 100% certainty what the rent will be.
The how much to spend on the renovations, like how often do you run into people where they go, well, I'm going to do this part of the renovations because I would like it if I lived in the house. How often do you run into that opposed
Classic.
to the numbers?
Yeah.
Oh, classic. I know. Yeah. I think if there's an interest to renovate, by the time an investor comes to talk with me, they've got really great creative ideas, and I have to sort of take their dreams and shadow them down.
But the Italian marble, everyone loves Italian marble. Like, who doesn't? Renters.
Projecting what you want. Yeah, and that's a natural. But I also like that that's the excitement, because if you're into it, that's part of the enthusiasm. I just sort of crush their dreams and bring them back to numbers.
Yeah.
No kidding.
The cash flow queen and the dream crusher.
Yeah. The thing is, it's sort of about adding value, and it's about renovations, and that's the visual interest. But ultimately, it comes down to stacking a deal, and that's what I'm constantly educating my clients on. And even if they're not in a phase, they work with me for 12 months, but even if they're between projects, I say to them, the more deals you can throw in front of me with your initial analyses, and the more times I can give you my response, practice, the more of those you do will help you shape your own understanding of what's an average deal versus what's an exceptional deal versus a really terrible deal. Yeah. So it's in the practice and learning the numbers that will make the BRRRR or the cash flow hack plan work.
Yeah. So you're not just working with people who've had like an existing property for 10 years. There's also people coming to you who are looking to grow their portfolio and go, I've found this opportunity. What do you think?
Yeah, actually, most investors I work with are starting through me.
Right.
Yeah, so they'll have their own home generally and really have an interest in adding value. And they're typically the investors who don't want to wait, a whole property cycle to form a deposit and move. They want to be in charge of the pace of their portfolio growth. So most of my clients I'm helping buy right through to renovation. So that's the end-to-end sort of service. However, now working with a lot of investors as the interest rates have increased and interest deductibility has been removed, bringing their rentals to me. So that's actually the newer part of what we're offering, which is to help you, with what you have. Some of those properties may not be the ones I would help them buy, but when they already own them, we'll see what we can do with it.
Yeah, cool. And where are your clients? Like, are they buying all over the country? Are there particular areas they're focusing on?
Yeah, great question. So through our, support team and our team, we have, I call power teams. So that's everyone on the ground who can support our investors to truly invest remotely. So we have clients in Japan and other countries, and we'll help them invest in Hamilton or Auckland, Dunedin. So that could be draftsperson, property managers, planners, and then obviously the full execution from your builders to plasterers, painters, located through the country, so that I think 85-90% of my investors buy where they do not live, unless they want to be on the paintbrush or doing demo.
And that's actually a really key sort of, part of the whole renovation strategy is you're going to need good people if you're not doing it yourself. Because I don't know how many times you've seen grand designs, but generally speaking, if you get a bad contractor, it doesn't end well.
The guarantees with those sort of things, if you do them yourself, overpriced, over time, and divorced. Okay, that's cool. What about and I've just put you on the spot here. Is there any kind of good client stories that, because people love hearing stories of kind of when it's worked out really well over a period of time and kind of keep it as high level and generic as you like. But any really good stories of somebody who's come to you and kind of where they are now?
Yeah, I have two actually, two very different sort of examples. But the first one is they're joining us for a webinar next week actually. But yeah, so a 50-year-old couple who South African and moved here. One thing I learned through working with them in the beginning is that when you exit South Africa, you lose all of your wealth. There's no transfer of your super or
We were talking about
anything.
this this morning, James.
Oh,
Very
it
hard.
sucks.
to get
And then-
this
so
one,
hard.
And then whatever you do have, the exchange rate is just punishing and
And no
very
one wants
volatile.
rand.
Yeah.
Literally, like you can go to a money exchange place with a ton of rand, and they're like, "I don't want this."
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that was news to me, and just the amount of sacrifice to shift country and start again here is so commendable. But they came to me and said, look, they're extremely motivated. The husband's an engineer, but was being phased out of a company that was being closed down.
Yeah.
And the woman, she was in the property industry, and in fact, she was, in all honesty, she was one of my property managers. And when I first started investing in Whangarei, I kind of inquired with her, pulled her into a couple of renos I was doing, and she was a bit blindsided. She's like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, so this is a 3-bedroom house. I said, no, but it's going to be a 5 in like 4 weeks. And she's like, what? And she kept kind of like turning up going,
There's more bedrooms.
trying to see what was going
Open
on.
the closet.
Yes. So she said to her husband, like, she literally said to me, we have to get on this bus. We've got 15 years to sort our retirement. I have a property management business, and we are nowhere near the 150K passive income we want to retire on. So I sort of mapped out what we could do through our strategy, and their goal was to buy and cash flow hack 2 properties in Whangarei where they lived. And within 12 months, they bought and renovated 3, but the third one, she turned into 3 incomes. No, sorry, 3 incomes. So there was a 2-story house, then it was actually a 3-story behemoth of a building.
Yeah.
2 top stories became 1 6-bedroom rental. And then downstairs was a second rental. But then she took it to the next level, and with this extra storage, concrete kind of garage area, she then thought through her local contacts, I'll have a company lease this out for storage. So she got 3 incomes. So basically in 12 months, she got 5 incomes, immediately giving her, at these interest rates, about $58,000 passive after tax. But the coolest thing is that with their plans between now and when they turn 65 in 15 years, those 3 assets alone will be providing post-tax income of $150,000.
Yeah, that is absolutely crazy.
So that's I tell you what though, they had to be super hands-on. They leveraged his skills, and they're so determined. And if you are that sort of person, you can get that kind of success in a fairly truncated period of time. Really good second example if you want to hear that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cool. So AJ from here referred some clients of yours, and they have a property portfolio. So this is kind of different. The first example, they didn't have any rentals. In this case, the clients had 5 or 6 properties, all kind of like fantastic properties, great capital growth, and lots of usable equity that they could leverage on. So I said to AJ, look, I'll just run an assessment of their properties. Happy to do that. Purely from looking at the number of bedrooms, the size of the houses, a few market checks on data, that sort of thing. Across those 5 properties, there was an immediate increase. Just happy to give them the tip. There was about $14,000 of additional rent on the table that they just weren't grabbing. Yeah. So I said, first of all, go do this, this, and this. Yeah. Talk to your managers and just go get $14,000.
Yeah,
that should cover a bit of that tax bill. And then there's already a whole there's another opportunity through cashflow hacking to improve their rent even further. Yeah. So sometimes it just takes an hour, if you have a few properties, to sit down and actually critically challenge how they're performing. And one thing that I do like to challenge my investors with is, hey, look, if you've got $1 million asset giving you $700 a week in rent, how else could you take that $1 million asset? If you translated that into 2 properties or tried something different, would they perform the same, worse, or better? And that's just one way to kind of keep yourself on your toes.
Yeah, and it is crazy how even though it is such a large amount of capital and it's a really massive part of people's financial life, the rental increases are just slept on. Like honestly, and I know everyone has a differing opinion on what rents should be and access to housing, but historically, Kiwi landlords just undercharge, by a large amount.
You hear that quite often. I've had these tenants there for 5 years or 6 years, or it's my cousin who's renting here, and I know it's $50 below market, but they look after the place. I said, well, you're doing them a favor. That's fine, and I understand that relationship. But if you have a dream and you have a goal, and property is the vehicle, you're actually doing yourself that disservice by not letting yourself get to achieve those goals as soon as you want to.
Yeah.
Ruthless.
My favorite thing to say because I hear that quite a bit as well, is like, you've done them the favor. I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, you've given them like an absolute favor. Now's the time to just correct it.
Yeah. I'm just imagining Ilse talking to a client and be like, yeah, my son's in between jobs and has recently got divorced. And Ilse's like, kick him out.
Hike the rent.
Yeah. I mean, I've personally come a bit of a believer, if you will. I mean, we can trademark that. Ravi, write that down. Because essentially we had a client who received a inheritance, but they were spending all of their money. They had no spare cash flow to throw at anything. We know if you buy a new build at the moment, even interest only, you're probably topping it up 15 to 20 grand a year.
Ooh,
and they worked with a property coach, found some properties in Gisborne, put some cabins on the back, rented out to social housing, and the mortgage, principal and interest, the mortgage is clearing itself off, and even without any capital gain, they're doing something, right?
Yeah.
And it just shows that one size doesn't fit all, and you've got to do whatever's the right thing for your situation.
Yeah, totally. And, I think we often talk about the BRRRR strategy or cash flow hacking as being quite active. But the truth is that, for a bit of extra effort up front, which is to get a really great deal, find a great property you can add value to, even delegate the reno. No one has to be involved. You don't have to be involved. 2-3 months of extra effort that you still set and forget, pass that to the property manager. You don't have to touch that again. A bit of extra effort up front will probably roughly double that return. So even at 6.5, 6.7% interest rate right now, cash flow hacking investors are almost neutral. Yeah. And the thing is, we can't control the interest rates, right? But if we control the performance of the asset and we go for the strongest return as possible on that purchase, if it's an 8% gross yield or 9% gross yield, those are the properties that will come into the positive cash flow territory first, right? Yeah. So that's what I get my guys to focus on.
And it is the market, right? Like, we cannot control the market, but we know on average how the market performs over the long term, and it will come back, and there will be situations where actually you are now positive and you're going to be a lot more positive than you think. It's funny. This is like a game of snakes and ladders, and this is a ladder. Like, there it is. Like, literally.
Michael Vincent. That's a top 3 reference from you right there. I love that.
That's so good.
Is that from a podcast you've recently listened to?
It's not.
Most of Michael's one-liners come from podcasts he's recently listened to. That's very good. I do enjoy that.
It's just a shortcut. Yeah.
So, really good, so if we're being balanced with the conversation, and you're the cash flow queen, so I get why you're very pro it, but essentially it makes it sound like people who want to be hands-on, it's a good strategy. And then there's also ways to make it hands-off and more passive for people, where you bring in the experts. Who is this kind of strategy not right for?
People who don't like cash flow.
No. You don't like money?
Said no one ever.
Loser.
Yeah. I mean, someone who wants to be truly hands-off, existing builds for sure have maintenance, right?
Yeah.
So through the cash flow hack or through the renovation, we want to address all of the above, as well as the up-speccing and the desired renovation. So for the most part, it gets addressed. But, if you buy a new build, warranties, master build guarantees, you've got all that good stuff as well. So, potentially in the later stages of your property investment journey might be better suited to going, hey, look, you know what? I can't deal with the admin. I don't want the hassle. I'm going purely new build, turnkey from the get-go. That would suit someone who wants to be, not at all involved in the detail, and probably in a stronger cash flow position possibly.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. Balances we're going to get.
Yeah.
And then so for those who are struggling with cash flow right now, who maybe didn't listen to the last 20 minutes, what would be your biggest piece of advice and biggest tip to leave them with?
If they're struggling with cash flow?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say take the time to sit down and review your property or properties and put a truly critical eye over them. Talk to the professionals in your corner. So whether that's your property manager, a valuer, anyone that you know who's an expert in the field, and get some third-party opinions, because often through those conversations leads to opportunity or new ideas. Without conversations, those opportunities can't come through. And I think investors probably by nature tend to try and control and take care of it all. But honestly, the best ideas I've had have come as nuggets or thoughts coming from other conversations. There's so much information online, whether it's homes.co.nz, OneRoof. Have a look at the data. Either you might find that there's some usable equity you can put to good use if you spot an opportunity, or maybe you need a bit of a rent adjustment or some kind of expense correction. Go and negotiate the expenses to try and reduce them, for sure, as I mentioned before. And if there's any tweak to income that you can, in your personal income or through rent can help your situation a bit with, then check it out. Just sit down and focus on it, because it is a priority.
Yeah. And I think, again, just to reiterate one of the key messages there, speak to the experts. Just have a chat.
Yeah, and there's a cost to your services, right? So OPES Accelerate, if this is something that you're interested in, definitely reach out. This is not sponsored or anything like that. We've just seen what Ilse can do, and that's the purpose of promoting these kind of strategies. But if you look at the cost for the services and go, I'm not sure if I'll get a return on my investment, and you can probably talk well this, trust me, like in terms of taking action, making mistakes, not fully identifying the opportunity, like the ROI on your fees must just be like sound like a Ponzi scheme.
So do you want me to break it down?
Well, just if there's anything else to add on top of that.
Whether you're looking at it from a wealth creation mindset, which is kind of where I started, and then now having gone strongly down the cash flow route, ultimately it's about balance. But whether you're thinking, hey, I've got a return on investment mindset of I need X amount of value growth because I really want that next deposit because there's so many great deals out there right now. Or if you're thinking cash flow, the types of properties that our investors will create, I say to them, it's minimum 8% gross yield. That's the full purchase price and the renovation, like total debt, it's got to be 8+. Plus, I'm half Chinese, so 8% is a really important number. Not going to lie.
Love that number.
8 or 18, that's what we're going for.
So, but there's science to it too. So, so that's what I expect all of my investors, help coach them on that sort of number for the deals. If it's a multi-income deal, because to be honest, my heart and personal passion is in like commercial conversions or motel conversions, the return should be even higher. So, those properties are going to perform about twice as good or almost twice as well as something you can find on Trade Me without adding value to, or something that's more like a new build turnkey solution. But then if you're looking at, adding value, really it's about investing in yourself to get that education. 12 months with me is ideally I work myself out of that job, right? At 12 months time, you know it all and you can improve. What I find really good is that once investors finish working on one project, the next one gets better and better. Because, it's almost like a PB. You do one deal, okay, the next one has to be better and better. So,
I love that.
However you see it, work on your own PB, really.
Yeah, you hit a PB on the chest press the other day, didn't you?
Thanks, James.
Yeah, I'm proud of you. Cool. Okay. Ilse, this has been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So make sure if this is interesting to you, check out OPES Accelerate. And then if this is just a strategy that you're interested in kind of taking next steps on, just think about what are the actions that you can take, what are the steps that you can use to move forward with your own personal situation. It's just small, consistent steps over time creates wealth. Please subscribe, give us a review, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.
Thanks.